actually think that the most enduring harm to all of this is the way in which it's transformed and degraded our national character and our national political values. It's made it impossible for us to have moral leadership in the world. The State Department a couple of weeks ago condemned China for detaining a group of dissidents without charging them or bringing them to a court. They just disappeared them. But a week earlier, Barack Obama had signed an executive order ordering that Guantanamo detainees be held without any charges of any kind. So the Chinese, after they were done laughing at the U.S. condemnation, issued their own report sort of mocking the U.S. condemnation, saying, well, we condemn the U.S. for what it's doing at Guantanamo and for the racism that pervades society and for the huge prison state that continues to grow. It has made it impossible for the U.S. to exercise moral leadership, because when we condemn those practices that everybody knows we engage in ourselves, it doesn't do much but produce a global laughing fit. The other thing it does is it spawns anti-American sentiment around the world. There was just a recent poll in Egypt. You know, Americans were so enthusiastic about cheering for the democratic students in rebellion in Egypt overthrowing the Mubarak regime, and yet what was rarely discussed was that it was the United States that actually was responsible for Mubarak staying in power for 3 decades. And not only that, but the United States continued to support Mubarak until it became clear that he was no longer going to stay in power. And so a poll was taken in Egypt just recently that said that something like 80% have an unfavorable view of the United States. And when asked who the greatest threat is to world peace, something like 65% of them said the United States, 20% of them said Israel, and I think 8% or 10% said Iran. And you see the same thing happening in Afghanistan, where we, for the last 11 years, have been occupying and destroying that country, putting people in prison without due process. Think about how we would feel if a foreign country were in the United States, occupying us, dropping bombs on wedding parties, and abducting our citizens, putting them in prison with no due process, shipping them thousands of miles away to an island around the world. How much hatred we would have for the country that did that to us. That's what these policies do as well.